Peace be upon you. And welcome to a very special discussion on the Deep Dive, recorded on Friday, 12 September 2025, with Dr. Maqsood Hassan Azeemi Sahib. Life becomes truly meaningful when a human being discovers a hidden reality. Once that truth is known, he feels compelled not only to prove it, but also to share its joy with others. Imagine, for example, a spiritual master who opens a portal and allows someone to experience the journey through it. That moment is a personal condition for him. But instead of showing off what he can or cannot do, the true master works to transform others into seekers like himself. This is the beauty of spiritual guidance. Let's begin this enlightening discussion with an invocation of God's name. Bismillah. I am Ibrahim.
And I am Suman Ali Khan.
All right, let's jump right into our deep dive today. We've got a really fundamental question from one of our listeners to start us off. What exactly is the difference between Daleel and Hujjat? People sometimes seem to use them almost interchangeably. What's your initial thought on that? What do you understand by it?
That's a great question, and the listener's initial feeling about it is actually quite accurate. Generally speaking, especially when used negatively, Hujjat is often understood as arguing about something you don't really have solid ground for. It can sometimes just become a a debate for debating's sake.
Yeah, that's kind of how I've often heard it used too. Like, Hujjat implies someone's being maybe a bit argumentative, perhaps without a strong basis.
You've hit it perfectly. Now, to clarify, Daleel is about proving something logically, rationally. It's the foundation, the evidence upon which you understand reality. So, for instance, Dr. Sahab points out that the sunrise is a clear Daleel for the day.
Right, you can see it, it's proof.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And similarly, when the stars and the moon appear, well, that's the Daleel for night. These are undeniable, concrete proofs based on observation and intellect.
Okay, so Daleel is established, clear, based on logic and what we observe. Makes sense.
Precisely. Now, Hujjat. That's a bit different. With Hujjat, a person is arguing based on their own line of reasoning, their own constructed arguments. Now, Hujjat can be positive, technically, but like you said, it's most commonly used in a negative way. It often suggests, well, stubbornness or maybe arguing without a really solid, objective foundation.
That definitely tracks with how the word often feels when you hear it. That connotation of perhaps being stubborn or just arguing for the sake of it.
Spot on. Dr. Sahab gives a good practical example. Imagine someone complaining, saying there's no food at home, and then they make Hujjat about it. They insist, maybe get defensive, saying, it was a necessity, what could I possibly do? See, they aren't providing a Daleel, a real proof or reason. They're just presenting their own argument, maybe based on feeling helpless or just being insistent.
Ah, okay. So it's justification rather than objective proof.
That's a good way to put it. And historically, it's interesting, Dr. Sahab mentioned that around the 4th to 6th centuries Hijri, when Greek philosophy started influencing the East more, this kind of Akli Hujjat Bazian intellectual argumentation, maybe even sophistry, became quite widespread.
Right, so those philosophical debates, arguing back and forth, became more common then.
Indeed. But Islam, in contrast, has always really emphasized Daleel, the plural, meaning clear proofs. The Holy Qur'an itself is full of Daleel, providing evidence and reasons to understand reality. Dr. Saab often used a very powerful Daleel himself. He'd say, if you commit an evil act, that action itself signifies you're denying Allah's commands, because you're actively choosing not to obey.
Wow. So our actions themselves are a form of, well, practical denial. If they go against his commands. That's quite profound.
It really is. Now contrast that with Hujjat Bazi. If someone does something wrong and then tries to argue why they did it, oh, I was forced, or it was necessary, I had no choice, that becomes Hujjat Bazi. It's arguing around the command, not addressing the core issue with proof.
Got it. It's the justification after the fact.
Exactly. Take the example of sud, interest or usury. The Holy Qur'an, the Prophet Muhammad's Sever's final sermon, they were incredibly clear in prohibiting it, unequivocal.
Absolutely clear.
Yet, what do we see in the world? Continuous Hujjat Bazi. People argue, well, it's the global economic system, what can you do? They present this external structure as a reason to bypass the clear divine teaching.
So it's like using societal norms or systems as an excuse to override a direct command.
Precisely. And Dr. Saab made this point very clearly. When we start prioritizing, say, Mashrat Ishar, social consciousness, or worldly systems over Ilahi Talimat, the divine teachings, that justification happens through Hujjat, never through Daleel. A true Daleel would always align with Allah's commands.
Okay, that really clarifies the distinction. Daleel is the objective, undeniable proof aligning with divine truth, while Hujjat is often subjective argumentation, sometimes used to rationalize going against that truth. Makes perfect sense now.
Thank you.
All right, moving to our next question. This one takes us into, well, the nature of consciousness itself. How can a person free their mind, their zihan, from the constraints of time and space?
It's a very deep question, isn't it? But Dr. Sahab's answer, interestingly, is remarkably simple and direct.
Well, really, what is it?
He says, by simply turning your attention inward, towards your own self.
Turning inward. Okay. How does that actually free you from time and space?
Well, think about it. Where do time and space exist? They're external concepts, right? They define the reality outside of us. So as long as your focus, your concentration is constantly directed outwards towards that external reality, you're naturally going to be bound by its rules, including time and space.
Ah, I see. So being focused externally means operating within those external limits.
Exactly. You're playing by the rules of the external world. Dr. Sahab explained that the only way to really escape that bondage is to, well, go inward, delve within yourself.
Okay, so go inside. But who or what is inside?
Well, inside is Allah, and inside is you, your true self. When you draw closer to Allah, closer to that inner reality, you effectively step outside the boundaries of time and space. Why? Because those boundaries are external constructs. They don't apply in the same way to the inner realm.
Interesting.
And think about the Quranic verse, Nanu akrabu ilayhi min habli warid. We are closer to him than his jugular vein. Dr. Saab connects this beautifully. When you become truly closer to your own jugular vein, so to speak, closer to your innermost being, where Allah's presence is most intimate, then you are effectively beyond the external limitations of time and space.
SubhanAllah. That's a stunningly simple yet profound explanation. Connecting it to that verse really makes it click. If you reach that inner closeness, the external rules just don't bind you anymore. Beautifully put.
Yes, that was always the way with Dr. Sahab's teachings, wasn't it? Taking these immense concepts and making them accessible.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move on. We have another important question here. Dr. Sahab often spoke about the real human residing within the physical body, and that when this inner self leaves, the body becomes, well, useless. The question is, when people donate organs, before or maybe after death, how do those organs still show energy and function in the person who receives them?
That's a very insightful question. And interestingly, Dr. Sahab explained that this phenomenon actually proves his original point, rather than contradicting it.
Oh, really? So it actually strengthens the idea. How so?
Well, think about the process. When an organ is transplanted, does it just automatically work? No. It only functions if the recipient's Nazma, their subtle body, their soul, you could say, accepts it.
Right. Acceptance is key.
And all those medical tests doctors do beforehand, matching blood types, genes, tissue compatibility, what are they really trying to figure out? They're essentially gauging whether the recipient's Nazma is likely to accept that foreign organ.
Okay, so the medical tests are like a physical proxy for the Nazma's compatibility.
In a way, yes. And what happens when there's rejection? What is rejecting the organ?
The recipient's body, their immune system.
Yes, but Dr. Saab would say it's fundamentally the recipient's Nazma that refuses to integrate it. So the crucial point is this. Who is actually operating that transplanted organ once it's accepted? It's the recipient's Nazma. It's the recipient's own life force, their subtle energy that powers and runs that organ. Without the recipient's Nazma accepting and operating it, the organ itself is just tissue. It wouldn't function.
Oh, I see. So it's not about lingering energy from the donor, but about the recipient's own Nazma taking control and animating the organ. That makes things much clearer. Thank you. Our next question comes from Murad regarding the concept of Faiz. Dr. Sahab once described Faiz as rang charna, which literally means like adopting a color or taking on a way of thinking. What's the real essence of this spiritual transformation?
Yes, Dr. Sahab was absolutely right. The core meaning of Faiz is rang sharna. It's about adopting another person's tarzifik, their specific way of thinking. Particularly in a spiritual context, it means taking on the mindset, the perspective of your spiritual guide.
Okay, adopting their way of thinking.
And Dr. Saab used a really vivid analogy to explain this, which I think clarifies it beautifully.
Oh, I'd love to hear it.
He said, imagine someone washes their hands, right? And then they flick their hands to dry them, and maybe a few drops of water land on you.
Okay, just a few stray drops.
Exactly. Now, those few drops, they aren't enough to give you a bath, are they? They can't properly cleanse you. They might feel pleasant, maybe cool for a second, but that's it.
Right. Insignificant in terms of actual cleaning.
So, Dr. Sahab explained that the phase given by the giver, by the spiritual guide, is often like those few drops. It might feel good, it might be a blessing, but the real impact, the true benefit, depends entirely on the receiver. How much do they take from that interaction? How much do they actively try to color themselves in that guide's rang, adopt that way of thinking? Those few drops alone won't transform you.
So it's not a passive reception of something magical, but an active process of adopting the mindset. The initial splash is just a trigger, maybe?
Precisely. It might give you a kushgawar satasur, a pleasant feeling or impression, but it's not the transformation itself. This is why Dr. Sahab made a distinction between phase and what he called in amat, which means rewards or benefits. People often say, oh, I went to this shrine and received great phase, or I got such a benefit from visiting that place. Dr. Sahab would say, yes, you might receive blessings, benefits in amabat, maybe your problem got solved or you felt peace, but true phase, that only happens when you actually adopt the tarz efik, the specific way of thinking of that spiritual personality associated with the place or person.
That's a really important distinction. Because you hear people claim they've received phase, but then you look at them and, well, Koirang Nazar's Neyata, you don't see any real change in their thinking or their character.
Exactly. There's no visible color change. Dr. Sahab even used himself as an example apologetically, just for illustration, of course. He said, if I say 50 different things and you happen to like just one of them, maybe dislike two and ignore the other 47, well, that one thing you liked might be an inam, a small benefit or insight for you, but it's not phase. Phase would be if you actually started to think like him, if you adopted his overall tars efikr.
Wow.
So he really emphasized that the word phase is often misunderstood or used loosely. Its true deep meaning is jaisa banjana, to become like them, specifically in their way of thinking and perceiving reality.
That analogy of the water drops and the idea of actively adopting the color makes the common misinterpretation so clear. It's about transformation, not just receiving a fleeting blessing. That makes so much sense.
Oh.
But let's shift gears slightly. This next question goes back to the Qur'an, specifically Surah An-Naba, verse 7. Wal jibal autada, and the mountains as pegs. The listener understands jil means mountains, but asks what autada really signifies here.
Right. Atad literally means pegs or stakes, something that's driven in, embedded firmly into the ground, like a mech, a stake.
Okay, like tent pegs holding something down.
Exactly. And Dr. Sahab used a brilliant, very practical analogy to explain the function described in this verse. He talked about wheel balancing on a car.
Oh, okay. How does that relate?
Well, you know, if a car wheel is unbalanced, it wobbles, right? It shakes as it spins, especially at higher speeds. So you take it to a mechanic, they put it on a machine that spins it, identifies the heavy spots, and then they attach small weights to the opposite side of the rim to balance it out. This ensures the wheel rotates smoothly without wobbling.
Yes, a very common procedure. Keeps the ride smooth.
Precisely. So Dr. Sahab explained that Allah Almighty, in his wisdom, designed the earth similarly. The Earth rotates on its axis and it also revolves around the sun. To ensure this massive sphere rotates smoothly and steadily without wobbling or shaking erratically, he placed the mountains, the jibal, like atad, like balancing weights or pegs embedded into the Earth's crust. They help maintain the planet's stable rotation.
SubhanAllah. That's an incredible perspective. Thinking of mountains as planetary balancing pegs, it reveals such amazing design and purpose. Truly astonishing. And related to that, sir, what about the connection between mountains and water? Is there a specific relationship there?
Yes, definitely. Dr. Sahab also taught that mountains function as panike mashkiza, like traditional water skins, essentially natural reservoirs for water.
Water skins. How does that work?
Well, think about the water cycle. Water evaporates from oceans, forms clouds. And where do these clouds often travel? Towards mountain ranges?
Right, they often get caught by mountains.
Exactly. They hit the mountains, rise, cool, and release their moisture, often as rain or snow at higher altitudes. This snow forms glaciers, which melt and feed springs and rivers originating in the mountains. It's a natural water collection and distribution system.
Okay, that makes sense.
And Dr. Sahab pointed out something fascinating. If you're on a high mountain, say at 10,000 feet above sea level, and you dig down, you often find water at surprisingly shallow depths, maybe only 50 or 60 feet down.
Wow, that is surprising. You'd intuitively think it would be much, much deeper at that altitude.
Exactly. He contrasted this with, say, Karachi, which is near sea level, where you might have to dig 80 or 100 feet or more to hit the water table. Finding water so relatively close to the surface at such a high elevation strongly suggests that mountains are specifically designed to hold and store vast quantities of water. You see springs gushing out, waterfalls. It's all part of their function as these natural reservoirs.
That points a really clear picture. So mountains are not just stabilizers, but also vital, divinely designed water storage and distribution systems. Understood perfectly now, thank you. All right, staying with Surah An-Naba, the very next verse, verse 8 says, Khalaqna azwaj, and we created you in pairs. What's the deeper meaning here?
This is another area where Kalanar Baba Olia offered a really unique and profound explanation, which Dr. Sahab relayed. The interpretation given is that takhliq, or creation, fundamentally happens when two things combine. Masad, which means purpose, and taqwaza, which means the urge or the requirement for that purpose to be fulfilled. So the formula is purpose plus urge requirement equals creation.
Purpose plus urge equals creation. That's a very different way of looking at pairs. Can you give an example?
Yes, Dr. Sahab used the example of a car again. What's the masad, the purpose of a car?
To transport people or things.
Right. Now, what are its takaze, its essential requirements or urges needed to fulfill that purpose? It needs petrol, water for the radiator, battery acid, air for the tires, air for the carburetor, grease for the moving parts. Dr. Sahab listed about 8 key things. When all these requirements, these takaze, come together with the car's fundamental purpose, then the takhliq, the creation, the functioning car, comes into existence.
So the pair in this sense isn't male-female, but the pairing of the underlying purpose with all the necessary components or requirements needed to achieve it.
Exactly. That's the interpretation presented. It's a much broader concept. People usually default to thinking pairs means male and female. But Dr. Sahab pointed out that in Kalandar Baba Olia's book, Lo-e Kalam, when discussing this principle of creation through purpose and urge, there's actually no mention of male-female dynamics in that specific context. He does mention, for instance, that Hazrat Maryam, Mary, received wahi, divine revelation, but notes she wasn't a prophet, letting different kinds of divine interaction beyond just prophethood or gender roles.
Subhanallah. That completely reframes the understanding of azwaj, or pairs, in this verse. It's about the fundamental pairing of intent and necessary components for anything to exist or function. That's fascinating. Sir, let's move to a question about the chain of divine guidance. We know about the approximately 125,000 prophets, peace be upon them all, and that prophethood concluded with Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. But the mashal, the torch of guidance, is said to have continued through the Awliya Ikram, the friends of God. Is this system of guidance still active today?
Oh, absolutely. Without a doubt. Dr. Saab emphasized that Allah's sunnat, his way, his system, never changes or alters. Providing guidance to humanity is an ongoing part of that divine system.
So how does that guidance manifest now after the final prophet?
Well, Dr. Sahab explained it starts within us. First and foremost, we all have our zamir, our conscience, that inner voice nudging us towards right and away from wrong. That itself is a form of Allah's guidance, his voice within us.
So listening to our conscience is the first step.
It is, and Dr. Sahab described a kind of progression. Allah who remain as these guiding lights. Their role is to call people back to follow and walk upon the teachings of the last prophet. They keep that torch burning.
That's a really clear and beautiful way to frame their role. They are the inheritors who keep the final message alive and explain it to subsequent generations.
Exactly, and this principle isn't exclusive to Islam in a sense. Dr. Sahab mentioned that in other traditions, too, you find figures like sages or saints in Christianity, for example, whose role is often to interpret and explain God's message to the people. There might be differences in how they're recognized. Sometimes a saint is more formally appointed by a religious hierarchy, while a sage might be more like an Allah wala banda, someone recognized organically for their devotion and connection to God, but the function of guiding people back to divine teachings persists.
That provides a very comprehensive picture of how divine guidance continues. Thank you so much for that clarification. Now, just circling back to something we touched on earlier, we discussed gaining freedom from time and space by turning inward. You mentioned the method is Muraqabah. Could you elaborate on the practical way to actually do that, to enter that inner self?
Yes, the way is indeed Muraqabah. But we need to be clear about what Muraqabah truly means, according to Dr. Sahab.
Right, because most people probably think of it as just, sitting quietly with eyes closed.
With a slight audible smile. Exactly. And that's the marvel, or perhaps the irony of it. Dr. Sahab stated very clearly that the real essence of Muraqabah is garo fikr. It's a deep contemplation, profound thought, reflection. It's not just the physical act of closing your eyes. Now, where does a person engage in garo fikr, in deep thought? Do you do it externally, outside yourself?
No, of course not. Contemplation. Thinking deeply that happens inside.
Precisely. So that is the way to go inward. Garo fikr, deep contemplation, is the practice of muraqabah. It's the pathway to the inner self. But as Dr. Sahab often noted with a hint of astonishment, it's unfortunate that this very act of deep contemplation, garo fikr, has somehow become treated almost like a shajar mamnua, a forbidden tree, by many. People shy away from it even though it's the most direct road inward.
That really is quite something, isn't it? The very key is often overlooked or avoided. Okay, sir, one final question for today, and it's a rather curious one. Thinking about Jannah, about paradise.
Yeah.
The food and drink mentioned, will they be composed of roshniyon, of light, or will they be physical, material substances like here?
With a gentle, inquisitive tone. That's a fascinating question. Let me ask you this in return. In Jannah, what about your body? Will it be physical like this one, made of dense matter, or will it be a body made of roshniyon, of light?
The understanding is that it would be a body of light, wouldn't it?
Exactly. So if the body itself is fundamentally composed of light, how could its sustenance, its kurak, be purely material, be madiyat in the dense sense we know here? It follows logically that if the form is light, the sustenance suitable for that form would also be essentially light base.
Okay, that makes sense. Like nourishes, like...
Precisely. And Dr. Sahab used an analogy from our current experience too. Think about taste. Who actually experiences taste? Is it your physical tongue and mouth, or is it your inner self, your consciousness perceiving through those senses?
It must be the inner self perceiving it.
Right, because, as Dr. Sahab pointed out, if someone is unconscious, maybe in a coma or under anesthesia, you could put the most delicious food in their mouth, but would they taste it?
No, they wouldn't perceive it at all.
Exactly. Their physical apparatus is there, but the inner perceiver isn't engaged with it in the same way. This shows that even here, the experience is fundamentally linked to the inner self. Furthermore, Dr. Sahab touched upon the scientific understanding, well, the spiritual scientific understanding, that roshni, light, is fundamentally made of larain, of waves or vibrations. Here in this physical world, these waves become incredibly condensed, compounded upon each other to form what we perceive as solid madada, as matter. So at its very essence, even the matter we see around us originates from these waves, from light.
So, in paradise, perhaps we experience sustenance closer to its fundamental wave or light form, corresponding to our light-based bodies there. That ties it all together beautifully. Thank you, sir. Please like this video and leave even a single word comment. Subscribe to this channel, Melody of Divine, if you have not yet subscribed. Share this video with those who have the same taste for understanding spirituality. The purpose of this discussion is not that you just listen and stop there. Its real purpose is that you rise beyond yourself. Believe that whether your problems are related to money, business, or anything else, when you hand yourself over to Allah and walk in His trust, a breeze of mercy comes toward you in such a way that difficulties simply do not remain. Try it. With many prayers, inshallah, we will talk again. Allah Hafiz to all.